Ken Grossman.
Thank you, Julie. I'm honored to introduce James Miller, Chair of Manual's esteemed Journalism and Communications Department, and Liz Palmer, who's the J&C Magnet Coordinator. First, a little background. As a part of Manual's J&C program and under the leadership of Miller and Palmer, the school produces a national award-winning student news publication called the Manual Red Eye. Manual's J&C Magnet is one of the nation's top award-winning media programs for high school students, preparing aspiring students for careers in journalism, broadcasting, public relations, advertising, multimedia, graphic design, and photography. Manual Red Eye covers everything from the male Manual football game to the Kentucky Derby Festival to political elections. This presentation is particularly timely as last October, the Red Eye broke a big and actually a national story concerning our Kentucky State Police. A training slideshow used by the KSP urged cadets to be ruthless killers and quoted Adolf Hitler advocating violence. Our governor, Andy Beshear, responded to the story with the following statement, and I quote, "This is absolutely unacceptable. It is further unacceptable that I just learned about this through social media." A quick personal story. You might see I have with me my son, Jack, who was a 2016 graduate of Manual's J&C program. And so I got to see firsthand how the leadership, training, and guidance provided by Mr. Miller and Ms. Palmer is preparing students for success and literally changing lives. James Miller graduated from Manual in 1989 and went on to earn a BA in communication with a concentration in film and video production before earning a Master of Arts in teaching from the University of Louisville. He's taught in Manual's Communication Magnet since 2006. James has earned numerous awards as a journalism educator, including the DuPont Manual PTSA's Lifetime Achievement Award. Liz Palmer studied journalism and English at the University of Georgia and U of L, then wrote and designed for local publications before earning a Master of Arts in Teaching from U of L. Ms. Palmer has also received numerous awards, including the JEA Rising Star Award and the Jefferson County Teachers Association Spotlight Award. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to our speakers today, James Miller and Liz Palmer.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate the invitation from Ken. It's nice to see so many folks here. I would like to say hi to Gene West, who I worked with at WHS 11. Always a very kind and thoughtful person, a wonderful person to work with. And thanks to Stephen George for the very nice words. The admiration is mutual. I talk to my students all the time about the great work that WFPL and the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting are doing. I hold them up as models frequently for good journalism. And I also want to say hello to my boss, Dr. Michael Newman. So no pressure, to have my boss here watching the presentation. Hopefully I'll do fine. Let's find out. Let me go ahead and share my presentation screen with you. All right, I just want to first make sure that everybody can, in fact, see the slideshow. Yeah, good. I have to ask my students the same question because once I hit screen share, my screen vanishes, so I have no idea. Okay, so the title of this is From Almost Abolished to Accolades and Awards, and it's about how the J&C Magnet program at Manual went from near extinction to the place that it is today. And I do have to say that unfortunately, my wife, Liz Palmer, could not join us today. She's still recovering from a medical procedure. She just did not have the energy to sit in on the meeting and to join me in the presentation. So I'm afraid I'll be flying solo today. However, I'm also pleased to say that Satchel Walton, one of the students who was instrumental in breaking the story about Kentucky State Police, is joining us for the meeting and will be available for the Q&A after the presentation. So let's get started. So in 1984, DuPont Manual first introduced its magnet programs. The Youth Performing Arts School was actually created, I believe, in 1978. And in 1984, the superintendent at the time, Donald Ingerson, approached Joe Litke, who was Manual's principal, and said, why don't we make Manual into an all-magnet school? And if you are looking closely at the slides, you can see that's me down there on the lower right. I was a member of this graduating class in 1989. At the time, our program was known as Communications and Media Arts. The program only had one full-time teacher. The other teachers who taught the classes were English teachers. So we had one full-time CMA teacher, and then the other ones were just, English teachers who mostly taught English classes, but would also teach occasionally a journalism class, or be the newspaper advisors or whatever. There was one computer lab and one TV studio, and that was the program from 1984 to 1989. After I graduated in 1989, I didn't really keep up with what was going on at Manual, but in 2006, I started teaching at Manual. I've been teaching at Shawnee High School since 2003, and I happened to hear that my old teacher's position was now vacant, and so I thought I would apply for it. At the time, the program was still called CMA, Communications Media Arts. The applications for the program were way down. Every year, this particular magnet program accepts no more and no less than 50 students, and the same is true of the visual arts magnet at Manual. But around this time, in 2006, they were getting less than 50 applications, or sometimes like 52 or 53 applications. Administrators told me on more than one occasion that the program was facing cancellation because honestly, there's a lack of interest from students, from applicants, and the program wasn't really doing much. There was the yearbook, there was the newspaper, which came out maybe only 2 or 3 times a year, and there was no daily TV show. There was none of the things that the magnet program is currently doing. And so they were apparently having some serious talks about eliminating this magnet program. In 2007, my wife, Liz Palmer, who taught with me at Shawnee, also transferred to Manual. And at that point, I had revived Manual's daily TV show, which was called Manual AM at that point. And Liz took over advising the yearbook from its previous advisor. We started a campaign of actively branding the program, as you can see from the red CMA shirts here on the slide, which were designed by one of our students and are meant to suggest the CNN logo, obviously. And this is also the point where we started achieving some of our national recognition. In 2010, Liz founded Manual Red Eye with a group of students, and we started attending national conventions, and we started developing even more of a local and national reputation. There's these national journalism conventions, the National Scholastic Press Association and the Columbia Scholastic Press Association, which offer not just awards, but also real-time competitions between journalism students all around the country. And when we started doing well in these competitions, that brought us some more notice. In 2012, JCPS decided to start programs at a handful of other high schools that would also be called CMA. But their CMA stood for Communications, Media, and the Arts. And this program was sort of a combination of our magnet and the Visual Arts magnet and the Youth Performing Arts School magnet at Manual. So we decided to rebrand as Journalism and Communication, or JNC, to emphasize our programs focused on journalism. At this point, our number of applicants started rising really dramatically. The photo on this slide is an aerial shot of the 140 applications that we had to review that year. So as you can imagine, as the number of applications goes up, the quality of the applicants also goes up. In 2014, Manual Red Eye landed its first really big scoop that had a big local impact. And I'm sure a lot of you remember this incident that was called the Louisville Purge. And it was covered quite breathlessly by local press, interviewing lots of random people on the street and suburbanites about how scared they were about the Louisville Purge. Lots of quotes from LMPD officers who were taking it very seriously. And my students, they were internet savvy. They knew about social media, and they're like, wait a minute, this is just, a prank or a meme that has gone awry. And so they tracked down the Iroquois high school student who originally posted this on Twitter and interviewed him. And for some reason, that was something that other folks in the media had not thought to do. We also ran an editorial about the hype that was surrounding the so-called Louisville Purge. Lots of media organizations, after our scoop, ran stories acknowledging that the whole thing had been a hoax, but only the Courier-Journal acknowledged that we had scooped the rest of the local press. Other news organizations, which I will not mention, acted like they were doing the community a great service by uncovering this scoop, but we were the first to break the story. In 2015 and 2018, we won something called the Brasler Prize from the National Scholastic Press Association. So the way that the Brasler Prize works is that the NSPA holds a contest for Story of the Year in multiple categories, such as sports, breaking news, features, diversity, performing arts, and so on and so forth. So once all those contests for Story of the Year conclude, they then take all of those stories, the winners of Story of the Year, and submit them to consideration for the Brasler Prize. We were thrilled to win the Brasler Prize both of these years. One of the stories that we won it for was for a story on student homelessness and JCPS. And the other story that we won it for was children of prisoners who are being served by an amazing program right here in Louisville called Why Now, which is run by the YMCA. Oh, and as you can see, there are some blue links in this presentation. At the end of the presentation, I will show you all a URL where you can all see this presentation for yourselves and click some of the links if you want to follow up and read some of these stories. So in 2016, Liz founded a publication called On the Record. And this was a glossy full color magazine, runs anywhere from 24 to 48 pages per issue. I think some of their latest issues have had, 60 pages. But unlike a lot of other student magazines published by high schools around the country, the audience for this magazine was not manual students or even the manual community. The audience for this magazine was all youth in Louisville, ranging from people in their early teens to people in their early 20s. And this magazine very quickly went on to also win a lot of national recognition from both the National Scholastic Press Association and the Columbia Scholastic Press Association. In 2019, we decided to start entering the local Society of Professional Journalists contests. There's not a lot of local competition for high school publications. The SPJ was running a section of their annual contest for college students. So I wrote to the president of the SPJ at the time and said, can we enter some high school stuff in the college category? And she said yes. We were thrilled to do very well in the local SPJ awards as well. And again, there's a link here to a list of the stories that we won first, second, or third place for in the SPJs. So in 2020, as Mr. Grossman mentioned, we started publishing the Bigoted Badges series in October. And what was amazing about this was that we saw in advance, we knew in advance that this story was going to be a big story and that would probably go viral. What we didn't know is that a bunch of national and local news organizations would corroborate the story with their own reporting, and that news organizations literally around the world would pick up this story. I've seen this story published in Russian, Chinese, French, Italian, German, Hebrew. I think that's everything. It's a lot. So global coverage of the story. We also, in 2020, won recognition from the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. That each year they have a prize that they give called the Selden Ring for investigative journalism. And this is a contest that is for professional journalists. This year, the Associated Press won the Selden Ring Award. So even for us to get a special citation from USC Annenberg was a big thrill and a big honor for our program. And in 2021, the program is doing better than ever. We now have 3.5 full-time teachers. We share one teacher with the English department. We have 2 computer labs, a TV studio, and a photo studio. And we're constantly upgrading our equipment, computers, cameras. We just got a hold of 10 iPad Pros and Apple Pencils for our design and illustration students to use in their work. A lot of the credit, I would very easily say most of the credit for the success of this program goes to Liz Palmer and her vision for what not just J&C could be, but for what education ought to be. So I want to go through these point by point. The first thing that she really pushed for is to let students learn by doing. As Jack and Grossman and Satchel can tell you, we spend some time their freshman and sophomore year giving some direct instruction. But even in freshman and sophomore year, that is when they start learning by doing. You know, they're writing inverted pyramid news articles in their freshman year, and then going on to write features, editorials, personality profiles, and doing investigative stories and public records requests in their sophomore year. We also want to let the students teach each other. In our program, I'm not sure how it is in other high schools, but in our program, there is a sense of, I would say, respect and excitement between the upperclassmen and the underclassmen. The seniors and juniors are very excited to mentor the freshmen and the sophomores. And all of our publications are led by the students. We have student editors in chief. We have students at every level of these publications. And whatever you see in the publications, whether it's on the record or our yearbook or our literary magazine, One Blue Wall, our TV show, which is now called CSPN TV, or on Red Eye, 100% of the work, whether it's writing, photography, video editing, proofreading, copywriting, any of that stuff, all of it is done by the students. And they feel a strong sense of ownership over that work. We also really encourage them to be creative and to take risks, to do what no one has dared to do before. And sometimes those risks pay off and sometimes they don't. And so one of the things that we try to help them with is have the courage to fail, have the courage to dream big, to think big, to dare, and then to not succeed, and then to pick yourself up and try again. I think that's an important part of learning and education, and it's certainly an important part of our program. A while ago, there was I believe an author, like a self-help or business advice author, who advocated that workers try to find their why. And this is really important to Liz, to help students find their why. Why are they doing this? We try to deal with intrinsic motivation and not extrinsic motivation in our program. So sure, grades are important, test scores are important, those things matter. But we encourage students to find their own internal motivation for doing what they do. And we give them a lot of choice in the program. No student has to be on the yearbook staff or the newspaper staff. In fact, out of all of our classes that we offer, only 3 of them are required classes. They have to take 2 their freshman year and then 1 their sophomore year. And then beyond that, it's wide open. So a student can, if they're super excited about photography, they can join the yearbook staff as early as their freshman year, and then stay on that staff all 4 years and just really develop their taste and excitement and creativity about photojournalism. Or they can sample a little bit of all the staffs, or they don't have to join a staff at all. We really encourage them to find out why they're doing what they're doing. What motivates them beyond just a pat on the head from mom and dad, a good grade on a report card, nice letters from colleges, so on and so forth. Another thing that was really important to Liz, to both of us, was to be responsive to criticism from key stakeholders. And for us, that is students and parents. We never want to tell students that it's this way because that's how it's always been, or it's this way because that's what I said it is. I told you so. Because I said so. None of those are responses that students ever hear in our program. We want them to feel like they belong to the magnet, that they can have an effect on the magnet, that they can change the magnet. And a lot of the big changes that have come in our magnet program over the years have been from student and parent feedback and advocacy. And the reason that's important to us is because that provides a lot of buy-in. That contributes to our family atmosphere. That helps students feel more welcome in the program, like they're part of something. They're not just sitting in a chair passively receiving instruction. They are coming to this program to be part of a community. And then yes, don't be afraid to dream big and fail as long as you keep trying. The other thing that I think is exciting about the journalism communication program is that we acknowledge upfront when students apply. When they come to our JNC open house, we say, look, we understand that a lot of the people who come to this program are not going to be journalists. That's fine. That's totally fine. This is not intended to be a career preparation program. What's more important than students going to work for WFPL or the Courier Journal or the New York Times or whatever, is that they learn these key skills that are applicable to any career or any other form of work that people do. It's applicable to creative pursuits. It's applicable to nonprofit work. It's applicable to activism, just about any area that a student might want to pursue. So first of all, we teach teamwork. We teach students to work together towards a common goal. We teach them adaptability. One of the things that I frequently say in class when things go wrong on my end, like when I'm having technical difficulties, is that you got to learn to improvise. When things go wrong, you have to be ready to turn on a dime and find a different way of doing the things that you need to do. You can't just throw up your hands and give up. Of course, as I already mentioned, we want to teach them to take risks, which is, of course, a crucial skill, like no matter what field you're going into. A really important part of this that Liz actually directly teaches in her classes, as do I, but she really focuses on it a whole lot more, is the ability to give and receive constructive criticism. This is a skill that not a lot of adults have in the 21st century. We teach our students explicitly, here's how to make a criticism of another student's work that does not feel like a personal attack. And we also teach them to receive the criticism in the same way and not feel demeaned or belittled or like everything's hopeless, so on and so forth. We teach them leadership. One of the classes that Liz Palmer teaches is a class called editorial leadership. And all of the students who have leadership positions on the staff are required to take this class. So this is something that is explicitly taught. And the students themselves run that class. Like Ms. Palmer gives lectures and lessons on leadership in that class. But she also has the students do presentations almost every day that they meet on their own issues that they believe are pressing in terms of leadership and teamwork. We also try to teach the students self-reliance. We want to teach them that whatever solution you're looking for, whatever problem that you have to solve, you can probably solve it on your own. In our ideal world, students who encounter problems on any of our staff publications will solve those problems themselves. Now, they may come to us for advice, and we're happy to give them advice, but we try to be very hands-off and not solve their problems for them. And then finally, we want our students to be lifelong learners. This is a goal I know that JSPS as a whole shares, which is to remind and encourage students that education does not end when you graduate, that there's always more to learn, there's always more to explore, there's always more opportunities for you to enrich yourself intellectually, emotionally, physically, et cetera, et cetera. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I guess we'll open up the floor for questions for either me or for Satchel.
Yes, thank you very much, James, for the presentation. And Rotarians, if you would just unmute yourselves and ask James or Satchel your questions, we look forward to the dialogue. Bruce, could you unmute? I see you have a question here. If you could ask him directly or.
Okay. Do the students get any math or science, English lit, or regular high school courses, or is it all journalism?
Well, every manual student has to take the core content classes that are required by the state of Kentucky. So every student at manual, no matter what magnet they're in, whether it's visual arts, youth performing arts school, math, science, technology, HSU, or JNC, all have to take the basic English, math, science, social studies, humanities, foreign language credits that every student in the state of Kentucky has to take.
Thank you for that. Rick, could you please unmute? Rick Harnett?
Thank you, Julie. Listening to the presentation about the On the Record magazine caused me to wonder, does it actually reach students in most of the schools in Jefferson County and the district? And if so, does it accept ads for programs such as the Rotary Speech Contest, which is a pretty good deal for students throughout our Western Kentucky district, or for Interact, the Rotary program for high school students?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. Absolutely, On the Record accepts advertising. And if you will reach out to me, I'll drop my email address in the chat. I will forward your request for advertising to the students who run the advertising program in On the Record. I'm sure they'd be very happy to hear from you. As far as whether or not On the Record reaches students throughout the district, they can't, our students don't really send copies of the magazine unsolicited to teachers and classrooms around the district. But what we do is we're open to having, to mailing stacks of the magazine to teachers around the district to request them. We also have students who go around all of Jefferson County and drop off physical copies of the publication before the pandemic. In places like coffee houses, record shops, any place that, they, as teenagers, think that other teenagers will be able to find them. So distribution is tricky because, we don't have the financial resources of Leo that I think prints 90,000 or maybe 100,000 copies of their newspaper and just distributes them everywhere, all over the city. But we try to distribute them in places where we feel like teenagers will read them.
I just wanted to say, hi, Mr. Miller, this is Delene Taylor. I just wanted to say that I have been a subscriber to On the Record for several years now, and it gets mailed to my home. And I very much encourage you to consider that. It's a great publication. And as a member of the DuPont Manual High School PTSA, I wanted to say that how pleased we were as an organization to support some of the work of JNC. So great job, and thanks for being with us today. I did have a question. Have the adjustments necessitated by the pandemic to your program been ultimately beneficial or not so much?
The consensus among our students is that virtual instruction is inferior. And I think as teachers, we agree. We've had to make a lot of changes to our program because of virtual instruction. For example, the latest issue of On the Record is entirely on the web. They've made a gorgeous interactive presentation, which you can see at their website, ontherecordmag.com. Of course, Manual, Red Eye, being an online only publication, the publication habits haven't changed. CSPN TV, which used to have a daily TV show, obviously the students aren't in school, and so they can't produce a daily TV show together. So what they've been doing is making individual stories on their own and uploading them to our social media accounts. The yearbook staff, Satchel can probably speak more to this than I can, but the yearbook staff has been doing all of their work virtually, and they have somehow managed to put together a whole yearbook without ever seeing each other in person, which I think is an incredible feat. And the literary magazine staff faces the same dilemma that the rest of us do, which is normally, like, these staffs all have multiple meetings a week, either during class or after school. They've had to forego all of that, and they're doing virtual meetings, they're collaborating online, they're making extensive use of Google Drive to do as much collaboration as they can.
Thank you for that. James, this question is for Satchel. The question is, can you share with us how the environment at Manual allowed you to pursue the story that made the national press?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, Mr. Miller touched on this in the presentation, but I'd like to emphasize again that the community in the JNC Magnet in particular, and at Manual more generally, is so supportive, and not competitive isn't the right word, but it's friendly, competitive in a good way, and encouraging. And we all like each other. Maybe that's a little too general, but it's true though. I wasn't sure I was going to join the journalism and communications program, apply when I was in middle school. But when I went and saw the open house, everyone really seemed to genuinely like each other and have a strong community where they supported each other. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to be a part of. And it absolutely has allowed us to do that work. After my brother and I published the original article, we got a team together of some of the people throughout the JNC Magnet who wanted to pursue this story further. And we've been able to make the whole Bigoted Badges series out of that one article and pursue it more and follow up. And we all work very well together and are very collaborative and supportive. So it's certainly improved it much more. The whole environment has improved it much more than any individual could have made it.
Very good. Larry, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Be happy to, and I'll take my picture down and show my real self here. The question I have is, how do you teach your students about the so-called groupthink news organizations such as CNN or Fox News, as opposed to straightforward and unbiased news reporting? How does that work?
That is a great question, and that is something I could talk about for hours. We just actually finished a unit in Journalism 1 where we look at the Herbert Gans book, Deciding What's News. Herbert Gans was a sociologist who in the 1970s spent 10 years observing the newsrooms of multiple news organizations. And he discovered that there was a lot of groupthink, or what he called enduring values among journalists that influenced their news reporting. And so in their very first year in Journalism 1, we do spend a lot of time talking about exactly that. One of the other external influences that influences what journalists decide to cover is competition. What are the other news organizations pursuing? Are they doing well in ratings? Well, then we should also pursue that story so that we're not, left behind in the ratings race. Another big impact on what some journalists may decide or not decide to cover is the availability of material, which helps explain why you might see video footage of a helicopter crash in Wyoming here on local news, even though nobody from Louisville was in the helicopter and it happened hundreds of miles away. Why do they run that story? Because they have amazing video, right? And so we do talk a lot about the decisions that are not necessarily journalistic decisions that might lead news organizations to cover stories or to repeat stories or to hammer on stories or even to ignore stories that should be reported in a different way. But the other way that we do that, aside from, what they're doing their freshman year, is as they get older and they join staffs, the older students who have been on the staffs for at least a year or two will edit the younger students' work. And, we'll have somebody submit a news article and the editor might say, now hold on for a second, this doesn't read like a news article, this reads like an editorial. Why did you put like your personal opinion into this news article? You can't do that. And so it is a lot of like reinforcing the sort of standards of journalism from the student community themselves. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, could I follow up on that? What about teaching them about unconscious bias, which recently seems to be in the news for a lot of reasons, but we're obviously unaware of unconscious bias ourselves until you become aware of it some way. How do you go about teaching them about that?
That's a great question. I know that in Ms. Palmer's editorial leadership class, she has the students take the Harvard implicit bias tests specifically to address that. But one of the things Herbert Gans talks about in his book, Deciding What's News, is this concept of ethnocentrism, that American journalists, and not to pick on American journalists, I'm sure French journalists, Canadian journalists, Japanese journalists, Nigerian journalists all do the same thing, where they are unconsciously approaching an issue from a way that sort of underlines or highlights or gives preference to their perspective, right? And it's not deliberate. Like, I don't think there's no newsroom in the country, well, probably not a lot of newsrooms in the country, where, you know, like the senior editorial staff is sitting around plotting and scheming to, let's make the Democrats look bad or let's make the Republicans look bad, right? They're basing their decisions on what they perceive to be news values, but without having those types of important discussions about unconscious bias.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Alice Bridges, could you unmute, please?
Yeah, so Mr. Miller, thank you for educating my daughter, Erin Bridges, who was in the CMA era. And I took a screenshot of the picture from 2009 that she was in, yay. But I did want to hear more from Satchel about how a student got the scoop on a national story with the KSP. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know Erin. She's great. All a big community. So I definitely didn't get the story because I was the most intrepid journalist in the world. But my father is a lawyer, and he was working on a police shooting case. People at his firm were working on a police shooting case in Harlan County, I believe, out there in Appalachia in Eastern Kentucky. And they were, one of his partners saw this slideshow as part of the case, as part of discovery, and sent it to multiple professional news outlets. And I don't know why those professional news outlets didn't write a story about it immediately. I'm not going to call them out because they do very good stuff, but they weren't interested in it. And my brother, who's Cooper Walton, who's also a freshman in the program, and I saw it, and we said, "Oh, we can write an article about this." And so certainly having that community that's been built up in the program gave us the confidence that we could do that, because we thought it needed to be out there. It needed to be out there quickly and done well as soon as possible. And then there are the follow-up stories after that. We got some from one of them about the Department of Criminal Justice trainings using a video from a neo-Nazi film company we got from an anonymous tip after we wrote that first one. So it builds on itself, and then we get interviews with the governor from that. So it's worked out like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ken Grossman.
Thank you so much for a great presentation, all the wonderful work that you do. I'm curious about, obviously you have and need resources that most JCPS schools don't offer. And I'm wondering how you're funded and what your aspirations are for the program moving forward.
That is an excellent question. We don't, the program used to, when it was started in the mid to late 80s, it used to have partnerships with local news organizations. It got extra funding from the district to kickstart this whole magnet concept. That's not true anymore. I can't speak to how other schools divvy up their funding, but I know that Dr. Newman knows that we have budget meetings at Manual, and there is a small slice of the pie that's divvied up among all the departments, and the JNC program gets a slice of that pie. But the vast majority of our resources come from our parent booster group, which is called the Publishers. Their biggest fundraiser that they do every year is a trivia night, which you're all invited to. Like, you don't have to be a Manual parent or graduate or student to participate in trivia night. It was canceled this year because of the pandemic, but I'll be sure to, when we schedule next year's trivia night, Ken, I'll pass it along to you so you can pass it along to the Rotary Club. You're all welcome to come. And so that's the vast majority of our fundraising comes from that parent booster club, because we don't get a lot of funding from the school or the district. Certainly not enough to buy even one computer. Oh, we also get a lot of our funding from the yearbook program, which is I believe it is a $100,000 a year business. I'm sure Satchel he's on the yearbook staff, he can weigh in on this. But in between selling yearbooks and selling ads in the yearbooks, every year the yearbook staff turns a profit. And some of those profits are used to buy equipment for the yearbook staff, but some of those profits are also used to buy equipment for the rest of the magnet.
Barbara Sexton-Smith?
Yes, thank you so much, President Julie and Satchel and James. Oh my gosh, thank you all so much for being here. Satchel, it's great to see you sort of live again. So I have one comment, if I may, President Julie, and then a direct question related to that. So
Sure.
James, I am a on the record groupie. Yes, these are the spring of 2017 and the spring of 2018 copies. I treasure them and keep them. My question is about interns and internships while the students are with you at Manual. Because, the question is this: do you have an organized and internship recruitment program where you try to place your students with different entities or individuals for an internship? Or is that something that the students pursue on their own? Because I've got one of the most incredible internship stories, and I don't know if you're aware of it, of one of your students.
Well, we offer internship opportunities based on student interest. And so some years, and this is just something that we reserve for seniors, because sometimes they frequently have to leave campus to go to their internship. Manual's school day is divided into 4 blocks. And seniors who get into our internship program will leave school right after the 3rd block to go spend 4th block, or maybe a little bit longer than 4th block, with their internship. And so some years we've had 15, 16, 17 seniors in the internship class. Some years we only have 2 or 3 or 4. And it just depends on their level of interest. It's not a requirement. And again, like, we're letting students pursue their own interests and, find their own why. And we've placed students in a huge variety of internships, and not all of them are related to communication or to journalism. A lot of them are related to communication. And so we had, students working on websites for nonprofits. We have students working for ad agencies. We have students working for the Kentucky Derby Festival. So to answer your question briefly, yes, we do offer internships, but we don't have regular internship placements. Like, for example, there's not an open internship position at a local media organization that's just waiting for a JNC student to fill it. We try to help students find their own internship placements based on their interests.
Okay, well, if I could be of any help in any way as you go along here, I'm a former Metro Councilwoman, and the intern from Manual that came to me from your program, she sought me out on her own when she was a sophomore, and it is Audrey Champelli. And she interviewed me for, right, don't we all love her? Yes. She interviewed me for a political story, and it was on the night at the moment that I was won the election. And when it came time for me to serve in office for 4 years, I had no idea what I was going to do about communications. I needed somebody that I could trust, I could respect, give them carte blanche in pictorial, editorial, writing, to social media, to print, to everything. And it was Audrey Champelli. So fellow Rotarians, this sophomore in high school is the one that was responsible for my entire 4 years of all communications that came from me. And she's now at DePaul, and she's doing fabulous, and I stay in touch with her. So I'm going to encourage James, you and the Rotarians, let's get these Manual students out in our Rotarian businesses, because they are unbelievable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Barbara. And also, we just want to thank you, James and Satchel, for sharing about the excellent journalism program that you lead. And as a UK journalism graduate myself, I really appreciate your dedication in teaching the next generation of professionals. Your model, and also what Liz has described, it's just truly inspiring. So thank you so very much. And it's so important for us as a community to have a vibrant and informed civil society, the work that you're doing. We also want to thank Michael, who's the principal of Manual. Rotarians, you'll remember our great partnership when he was at Western High School and we were launching the Rotary Scholarship Program. So thank you so much for your continued support. And Satchel, you've inspired us all. So congratulations for the great work you and your brother and the other students are doing. It's very, very wonderful. So next week's meeting will feature Christy Hawley and James O'Connor with Racing Louisville Football Club. The program will be inspiring, so be thinking about who you might like to invite as a guest. Send their information to Alyssa and she'll send the private link to them for the meeting. Rotaries, what is Rotary session for those interested in learning more about the club? Will begin immediately following this program. And I just want to thank everyone for being with us. Be well. We are adjourned.